Hello, hello, everyone. I'm Anna Maria from Hasmark, and I'm joined by Jen as well. And today we're talking with Zachary Cooper, a quiet revolutionary of thought, a defender of leisure, and a student of what it truly means to live a life that belongs to you. He's someone who has a lot to say about why we're so hurried, stressed, and starved for time. And his new book, How to Have the Time of Your Life, is part cultural critique, part personal philosophy, and a part wake up call for all of us that time isn't just something that's on our calendar, it's truly how we live our lives. So today we're excited to pick your brain, Zachary. Welcome, welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I have to start by asking what sparked the idea and walk us through how did you get to this point that you wanted to write about time, because it's a big topic. It's a big mindset shift for all of us.
Time is a very comprehensive topic. There were a couple of things. Primarily, as I discuss in the book, I had a professor who said something that really launched my thinking about time. Mentioning, as we discussed, the use of a French press to make coffee, this particular professor also remarked how people who are more privileged tend to wind up working with their hands in the kinds of economies that we have today, whereas we would think from a more middle class perspective, it would be the opposite. You just delegate that task to somebody else to do it for you, or you'd be able to afford like a fancy piece of machinery to do it for you. But you take a look at some of the lives of the rich and famous, like Daniel Day-Lewis, for example. There's a gentleman who achieved a lot of success in his acting career, and he turned around and started to learn how to make shoes. He became like a cobbler. He apprenticed as a cobbler for a long time. I hope I have that right. We'll let people fact check in the comments if I've got that right. So that was interesting, and that planted the seed. And I went away from that particular class sessions thinking I could write a book about how if you really want to live a life where you have a lot of time, you pretend to go slower than you can, and that would somehow bring about a vibrational change. Then the other thing that brought it up for me was I had worked for 6 3/4 years, but who's counting, for a chiropractor. And once the gentleman who owned the practice retired, I was looking for work. And although I should have unlimited time at my disposal and feel like, I can finally get around to all of these things I want to do, I was even more hurried than when I was working full time. And I was trying to organize, well, how do I apply for a job? And am I checking in enough times with people? Should I be calling this company? Should I be knocking on doors throughout town? And now I have all this time to catch up on things around the house. And suddenly I was at a loss for time, although I should have more of it because it wasn't working. And then it occurred to me, well, maybe now's the time I should write that book and really test my own thoughts about the nature of spending one's time appropriately.
I love that you got the contrast as well, because that puts things in perspectives in a different way for sure.
It sure does.
Sure. Your preface is so on point. It illustrates how the smartest of us literally lose our minds when you have a less than pleasant encounter with time. Can you share more about what these moments can teach us?
Sure, I sure can. Yeah, we all do have these moments where we're in a time crunch and we make decisions that are, in hindsight, inappropriate. And of course, we wind up making a bad situation worse. I'll leave the exact content of the preface a mystery for people who want to buy the book, of course. But I think any one of us has those moments where we're late to a formal occasion and now we can't get our dress on right, or we can't tie our tie appropriately, and now we're stumbling out of the house and we trip and now we get a hole in our slacks, or we've made something muddy. And now we show up late and disheveled and unkempt, and everyone's like, well, where the hell were you? I think that these moments teach us a lot about the nature of hurry as a solution. We tend to imagine that if we have a limited amount of time, if we get what we need to do done faster, we'll have so much left to actually make up for the loss we're anticipating. I can't make it to work on time because I started off late. If I drive faster, I'll get there sooner, and it'll be even. It'll be even. I won't show up to work late. But that is inappropriate. That's a bad solution. There's something about our brain where we think that if we can outrun a threat, we'll be able to survive. And this is an inappropriate way to handle how we relate to time in an everyday sense in civilization. If you can't make it on time, you simply have to call somebody and say, I'm not going to be there on time. And they would rather get that from you sooner than you showing up looking like a mess or you showing up late to work. But that requires just a little bit of extra forethought, which, if you're going to be in a hurry, you're not going to give the situation. I think that that's all that needs to be said on that front. The lesson to be gained from being in a hurry is not to be in a hurry, but which is hard to do when you feel it because it's a physiological response.
And I feel it could bring up so many other things that are part of items maybe you need to work on. So, for example, when you suggested, logically, yes, set expectations with whoever's on the other end waiting for you, but you don't think of it that way. And for me, immediately what came up is, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm an organ. They're going to have all these thoughts about me, whatever they are. And that is more of a deterrent sometimes than of just giving myself the space, than just, I'll hurry as much as I can. So it shows you where you have a little bit of work to do, perhaps, in the way you approach things.
True. And when it comes to asking for that grace, I think a lot of us pull back and we don't want to be thought ill of, like, oh, I don't want them to know that I'm late. But they're going to know that something happened to you when you show up looking like a mess, or you show up late, or you show up and you're not prepared. And wouldn't it be a greater token of respect? Wouldn't it say, I'm thinking of you, but I can't make it there on time, to just give them that notice in advance? I think that most people would prefer that than you trying to make a particular item of time happen.
Instead of forcing it, for sure. One of the in one of your chapters, you go through this almost, I'd call it a rabbit hole because I find it fascinating. I would go down this rabbit hole with you. And you talk about Punching the Clock, a brief history of time. And you talk a lot about how in time past, things happened, like historical shifts, inventions. And I wanted to ask you, what is the thing that stays with you that you could share that shaped us today? Like, what's something that from all the way back in those years ago we didn't quite let go of that still affects us today?
Sure. Well, far be it for me to correct you, but it is a briefer history of time. That's the subtitle for that chapter, because a brief history of time, I'm riffing off of something Stephen Hawking wrote, trying to be cute. But let's see, what could I say to that question? I suppose the most surprising thing would be how we still associate daylight hours with work, and how this is often something that shoots us in our own feet. We associate daylight hours with work because we've emerged from a very primitive and agricultural basis where we didn't have office work, the incandescent lamp. We didn't have a lot of the conveniences that making working after dark or in the dark possible. Now, there are a lot of things that I could say to hedge on that. I think that the Chinese, for example, had natural gas to light mines in the 16th century or earlier. They found some way of making that work with bamboo pipes. But in our current era, and for most of us today, we work inside in artificially lit spaces while there's daylight outside, so that when we're done with work, we wind up going home in the dark. This doesn't need to be so. And there have been some movements, and I forget who they were started by or what they were called, so the viewers will have to forgive me, where they said, well, if we're going to have daylight savings, why don't we have a daylight savings that saves daylight for when people are actually out of work? So you go to work in the dark, maybe a little earlier, but then at the end of the day, you're not going home in the dark, and so you can spend more of your leisure hours while there's still daylight. Why don't we make it that way? But because we have this association with daylight and labor, we're kind of always in the dark.
Wow. That is definitely a mindset or a very different way of looking at things that I know I hadn't considered before.
You dedicate a full chapter to leisure. Why do you think leisure has become almost taboo in our productivity obsessed culture?
This is a very good question, and it's one that I've had to think a lot about because I am a very slow-moving person. And so even when I'm in a rush and I'm moving slowly, I try to say I'm being leisurely about it. I'm not. I'm in a huff, but my huffs, look like a snail's pace to most people. Leisure gets a bad rap because we associate virtue with work. There's that phrase, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And we have a very Calvinist or very Protestant-minded regard for work as virtue, which isn't always necessarily so. There are a lot of ways of keeping yourself looking industrious and occupied that really aren't very virtuous at all. But on the flip side of that, we associate leisure with vice, with licentiousness. And even the word licentious comes from the word for license in Latin, where we get the idea of leisure. Leisure is also out of that same root word, licere, because if you have leisure, it had to be granted to you. You had to have, who's given you the license for doing that? Who told you you could do that? And we tend to think, well, I have no other work to do, so I can just do my own thing. But leisure is also the taproot of civilization. Nothing compelling about life as we live it, or nothing compelling about what people do, comes out of working for a government bureau, having a stale 9-to-5 job. When you think of the great architectural projects in any major city, these things didn't, the Empire State Building, the American Radiator Building, the Sistine Chapel. When you think about art in general or music, it didn't come about because it had to be done. It came about because someone had an idea that they were very much compelled by, and putting it into action, making it happen, was something they did out of passion rather than necessity. Michelangelo was not a bookkeeper. So that's the issue. And I think that, it's very curious because people also tend to, I'm trying to edit myself and not use so many 4-letter words. People tend to take a dump a lot on art as unnecessary or frivolous, and in part because this is something that somebody does on their own time. I remember once going through an artist's journal that they had very generously lent to a local gallery so that you could see their process. And this person had taken like months, if not 2 or 3 years, to find the right shade of orange. No employer, no business-minded person, nobody that comes out of an MBA program is going to pay anybody for that length of time to find the right shade of orange. They're going to want it right now or as soon as possible because they have a deadline and they have an ad to make and they have a product to sell. It's almost antithetical to our economic way of thinking to work in a leisurely attitude. And we also associate slowness with a lack of intelligence, which I think is, it has it's not altogether wrong, but it's not altogether right. People who are quick-witted or quick on their feet are very bright, but they're bright in a particular way. And people who are taking their time, it's not necessarily because they're slow in the way that we think of a person being slow, but because sometimes things need to mature. I mean, we don't think babies are stupid because they come out the womb and can't walk or speak, even though it's going to take them a while to get thoroughly adjusted. And some of us never do get there. Some of us never get there. We're always tripping over our tongues on our own 2 feet.
But I hear what you're saying, because the slowness in some folks, that's just a lot of activity happening internally.
Hmm.
in their own creative process that cannot always be described or quantified or, put in a ledger
Hmm.
to the outside world either. So I hear what you're saying with that. And one of the things that came to me is like words like minimum viable product, put it out there and start selling it. And it just shows how society is very much concerned almost to a obsessive degree over productivity, make it cost the least amount as possible. And how do we add a little bit of that art and passion in there, right?
Truly, truly. And I think that adding that art and passion will come from people trying to integrate a leisurely perspective into their lives a little bit more and take the edge off of pushing and pushing and pushing. Once people can assess what it is they're really interested in, what they're really passionate about, and once people can voluntarily choose into those fields of activity, we'll start to see a lot more juice, a lot more life in the stuff that comes out because people will have put so much of their own life into it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the world is heading in that direction with folks being more aware of choosing vocations or career paths that are a little bit more aligned to how they enjoy working versus um, pigeonholing themselves into perhaps a way that they have to operate in a certain way that is not compatible with giving themselves space or giving themselves the leisure of going through the process to create the best possible product, whether it's for a company or a piece of art that is, for themselves to enjoy after work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, on a different topic, in one, I want to quote you because I really want to get your perspective on this as well, and for the readers too, because I thought it was fascinating. In one of your chapters, A Return to the Front Porch, you shared, lately, it seems there's a conspiracy in place to prevent us from conversing at all. And I thought that was fascinating. Can you share a little bit about what you meant by that?
Sure, sure. Uh, I think that anybody who has gone to a bar recently or gone to a cafe uh, would understand what I mean. Here is a space where people are supposed to socialize, and yet the first thing you pick up on is how loud it is, and it's a piped in loudness. It's the music that they're playing. It's the kind of acoustics of the space. Even restaurants now are far too loud. They're not built to muffle the noises of other tables. Uh, you're not capable of hearing what the other person is saying. You're sort of talking over all of the ambient noise all the time. And this prevents people from actually being able to listen to one another. And that's what stifles conversation is when people don't listen to each other. And so here are these spaces where people are outside of their homes, potentially outside of their comfort zones, trying to ingratiate themselves with strangers or trying to deepen their friendships with people they already know. And they can't because they can't listen to what the other person is saying. And so they're already struggling to talk over the other person. They're already struggling to hear. They can't quite pick up on all of the conversational cues that might be there. The conspiracy comes in where I think it's more deliberate. It's more deliberate to take advantage of, how do you say? Another way of putting it is people hate awkward silences. People hate awkward silences. People think that when, for example, you sit there and you struggle with what you're going to say next, or you stammer a little bit, that looks unintelligent and clumsy. And yet, when you fill that space in with noise to make people comfortable and sedate, you've ruined the social interaction. Because there are those moments when you should be hanging on somebody else's next word, and there are those moments when you should really be thinking about what it is you're saying. And it's even a mark of respect when somebody is having one of those pauses, because you don't want somebody to spill out just anything that comes to mind. You really want somebody who's capable of sitting there and saying, well, hold on a minute. You've raised an important question. I haven't thought about that. Or can you give me a minute? Because now what I'm about to say isn't even clear to me. And I care about you enough that I would like this to be clear and understandable to you. And if it isn't to me, maybe I need to change. And these are all of the different things that come out of people being capable of exchanging with each other. And another thing that comes up as well is how often it is you're in a public space and people want to shoo you out or want to make it about buying something. The no loitering in the mall, and somehow, nothing but delinquent teenagers are going to be shuffling around in a mall. Well, sometimes people are just going to have to sit down by the fountain and shoot the breeze for a little while, and that has to be a part of what it is to be human. Otherwise, we're all just being pushed by these economic forces to buy the next product, and that seems to me abysmal. Another issue is when there are like time limits on tables. I haven't seen this so much, but I've heard of this happening in major cities where like you only get 30 minutes to sit down and eat a meal. Well, then it becomes about how quickly you can eat this meal rather than actually sitting there and enjoying it. That seems like such a waste, both of the food and of the company. I remember once going to a cafe, and a friend of mine said, "This place is an everyday oasis." And I said, "What is an everyday oasis?" She goes, "So long as you buy one cup of coffee, they're not going to kick you out. So you could sit there through breakfast, lunch, and dinner on one cup of coffee." And this is it's not free, but it's a better model. You're not exactly selling more if you do that, but you're giving people a space to be intimate with others where perhaps something can come out of that. And places like those become cornerstones of community, whereas, some chain restaurant where you're a butt in a seat for a half an hour while you stuff your face, those things come and go.
Yeah. Wow. You led us through quite a lot to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you. What conversation do you hope this book sparks amongst readers, and who would benefit most from picking this book up?
Well, I want to say first, because I can see myself on camera just a little bit, I don't have the America mug to be jingoistic, It's not a slight against my Canadian friends. It's just this is the mug that holds the most coffee. And to your question about what conversation I'm hoping my book excites, do I remember it clearly? What conversation? The conversation that I hope this book elicits the most. I want people to really ask themselves, how much time do I have left, whether it's in this day or in this season, in this part of my life, or even in my life generally? How have I been using my time before? And how, with what I have been challenged by, how this book has challenged me, what can't I take for granted now? And how am I going to act on that? That's what I hope people start talking about. Whether it's, I can't take it for granted that I have another 10 years to develop a skill. I can't take it for granted that I can always say yes to the same things. I can't take it for granted that I can't get this done today because I only have an hour left, where maybe if I tried, I'd be able to start something. I'm hoping that this book will elicit those conversations for people.
Yeah. What I'm hearing too for me, because it's sparking a deeper introspective scenario in myself as well, with, having the 9 to 5, young kids, wanting to add more time for the leisurely things and crafts and whatnot. And what I'm hearing a lot of is, and what's coming up for me is, what is priority right now? And where do I want to be? Do I want to be with my kids cuddling and watching a movie, but the part of me that says, oh, I'm not doing anything, but it's ultra important to them. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, I wish I could draw or learn this or learn that or do this or do that or go to the task list or be anywhere else. So it's very thought-provoking from that perspective, and almost like setting up my pockets of what's important to me right now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And being able to share those priorities. I mean, if you want to learn how to develop a skill, that's something you can actually include people in who are close to you. And that's a valuable way of sharing that time because they learn what's important to you and you learn more about what's important to them. And you can even begin to inspire each other. I mean, kids are shoo-ins if you want to learn drawing because they're all about showing off what they know about the world. Uh, but even something like learning a new language, which is a little more brainier, that's something that can be really exciting to engage with another person because you begin to know them in a completely different way because you're hearing them express themselves in a different way. And it goes back to listening.
Yeah. No, language is fun. Well, don't keep us in suspense. When can we expect to be able to purchase your book, How to Have the Time of Your Life?
This is a very interesting question. There has been some consternation on this issue because I am a liver of my philosophy, and as anybody who works for Hasmark knows, there are times when it seems I'm dragging my feet. Uh, we originally had a date set for January, and it's looking like it'll be more towards February with what I am currently poring over right now. I'm looking at a lot of different edits, and I'm such a perfectionist. It's a blessing and a curse. But I'll say, is this really the word that I want to use, or should I go back to my thesaurus here? And I've used this phrase a couple too many times, and maybe there are too many adverbs in this sentence. I get sucked into those sorts of nitpicks. But
But it
I'm
is a strength. I will add that because so one of the things that everyone needs to know about Zachary is that he is funny. Like when you write, the way when you read something, it's almost like you need that pause to enjoy it in a completely different way. It's the kind of book that makes you almost like lean down and like look around you for a second as you process because it's funny, it's thought provoking, it's heavy topics, but the way you somehow chose your words make it work so well. So even if we were to say we're going to aim for winter of 2026, I think you'll make it.
I hope so. I think so too. I think we'll make a winter of 2026.
And where can people find you online?
Another very good question. Uh, I happen to have a LinkedIn. Um, we might have to include it in like the description of this video because I am so, what's the word? Naff at social media that I don't have any of that information on tap. Some people
Oh, and
they
it's too hard to say the links. So honestly, depending on the platform that viewers are watching this, it'll either literally be below, on top, or on one of the sides.
it'll be like the Brady Bunch. We'll have a bunch of different panels. Yeah,
Or like Vanna White, please refer to
that's right.
your sections. So we'll add all your details.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So on LinkedIn, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can also follow me on Substack. I write a lot of extra stuff there, referring to the book, expanding on different things that I've also put into the book. And I've been very tempted to just like tear things from the Substack and stick them in the book somehow because I feel like it's given me a second chance at reiterating things clearer for people. So LinkedIn and Substack to keep in touch, to keep in connection.
Indeed. And I do follow you on your Substack, and I highly recommend for anyone curious.
I'm delighted to hear it. Thank you.
Well, it was so good to talk to you about your book and see, told you, part philosophy in here because it does get you thinking about a completely different way how to approach your relationship with time. So a big thank you, Zachary, for coming on with us and sharing a little bit about you and your inner world and how you think about things and about your book.
Oh, it's been an absolute delight. You've asked such wonderful questions, and thank you for letting me hold forth.
Anytime. Well, everyone, enjoy and please make sure you get your hands on how to have the time of your life. Bye for now.